right, now for something a little different. I have been falling down the rabbit hole of genealogy, and I have maybe a problem that not everybody faces, but I'm sure some of you out there do. I didn't know where to begin. Not because I don't know anything, but because you can see this is my family tree, and it goes back even further. Like, this is the paternal line. Take, John Hilton here, his ancestors. This keeps going and going and going. Oh, wait, I clicked descendants, not ancestor. Sorry. It goes back even a little further. And this is just one of the lines. So we go back to Blethen to Holton here. Actually, yeah. I thought he was the furthest back we got, but I've actually got some other ancestors, some other lines that go even further back. Where do you start with that? Well, what I've been doing is actually going down instead of going back up the tree. I'm going down the tree. So let's go back to myself. And what I've done, I've started here with William, and I'm trying to map out his descendants as far as I can get. Most of them were in England, stayed in England, but a number of them emigrated. Some of the lines I can't extend any further than I've gotten them. Some of the work, like a lot of this stuff, has been done already. And so I'm just trying to push it as far as I can go. One of the big issues I've been running into is that in England, the census records have only been made public for those records up to 1910, 1911. And there's, so a lot of things happened between then and 1921 because of World War I. And so, but after that, a lot of the records are no longer public because of concerns about privacy and stuff like that. So can only get so far, but I'm trying to get it as far as I can in the hopes that as descendants start to do their own genealogy work, they can hook up into stuff that's already been done. Or that when those records do become available, it's pretty simple to say, okay, I need this person, this person, this person, and this person, and do the work from there. So some of these, like, will take, this person, so you'll see the yellow things here. One of the main reasons I'm doing this is because, member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we believe certain ordinances are necessary for exaltation, and that they can be performed posthumously. So we collect this information and perform these ordinances in our temples. You don't have to do that to be interested in family history, and it's certainly not the only reason that I'm interested in family history. But when I see somebody who's died under the age of 16, that mostly means my job here is done. But for a lot of these other lines, like we've got some people here, and I assume that this mostly means that their descendants are still alive. Yeah, they're, if the person died in 73, that probably means, give it 20, 30 years, their descendants may start coming up. And if they're already members of the church, a lot of the connections happen automatically through Family Search, which is kind of the main site I use to organize a lot of my family history. So this is William Hilton, where I've kind of started him and his wife, trying to get their descendants squared away. I'll give you just a brief overview of this window. So you'll have the person, birth and death information. This can be very vague, down to approximately, 1100 or things like that. If you're related to them, I think this is only in a direct line or maybe like slightly auxiliary. I could be wrong. I haven't played too much with it, but you can click on the person and view. It goes up from you to the person so you can see where they are. I think I've seen it come down, at least an uncle and maybe a cousin down. But that's something that's fun to play around. You can get an account here for free. You don't have to be a member of the church. You don't have to pay anything. This is just all the records that the church has that are that they've been digitizing for years and years and years are available for you to do your family history research. It's not the only resource available, but one of the things I like about it is it's trying to kind of build a definitive family tree. And so if you have a source that's about one person, you can attach that source only to one person. And if you think it's wrong or it should be attached to a different person, or somebody's made two different versions of the same person, there are tools that you can use to fix those problems. But it's basically one set version of our understanding, our collective understanding of the births, marriages, deaths, and all the relationships between all the people. Somewhere like Ancestry, Find My Past, My Heritage, or any of the other family history sites, you have each person member of that community has their own version of their family tree. May or may not be correct. Not saying that the family search thing is always correct. I've found issues. I've probably made some issues myself that somebody else will correct over time. So that's just a difference. It's my personal preference. You might just prefer to start with your own and connect here, or just use this for research and not the family tree portion of it. But so you know what I'm doing. So I'll have information about it, about the person, where they were born, where they died, alternate names, other bits of information here, and then family members. So William Hilton married Sarah Hardman. These are his parents, William Hilton and Martha, and the children that they had. So William had a brother Henry and a brother Hugh. And then these are all of their children. It can be, as you can probably imagine, just looking to Sarah Ann Hilton's, but they have different dates. Not uncommon for people to, if they've lost one child, to name the next child the same name, at least in British culture. I'm sure it's different other parts of the world, so I've mostly been focusing on British genealogy just as I've been starting with this line. And then these are the links to the sources. The ones that have this little icon are the family history or the family search records, things that are stored actually on the site. Anything that looks like a little globe is a link from another site. So this here is the Find My Past record for the 1841 census. And then down here at the bottom, you can add discussions, like if you see, people keep doing the same thing, and or I have a question, and so hopefully maybe if somebody comes and looks at this, they'll understand what needs to be done or be able to answer your question. You can also add notes. Some of the stuff, like ancestral file number, there have been different versions of the family search type of database that the church has maintained for a long time. So a lot of this will be okay, we created this record from this other database, and it won't necessarily have any other records attached to it. It's just that's how it was created, is somebody knew that this person at some point in some version existed. Hopefully. I did have there's a family story of someone who was so excited to find a new family history name that they put it all together and sent it off without realizing that Thomas Hewas was Thomas, period. He was, not someone with the last name of Hewas. So another thing Family Search does is let you, as I said, you can attach the records, and they'll try as much as possible to help you figure out okay, this is the right name. Hopefully it's approximately the same year. You can look at the information. The name is William, wife is Sarah, son John. And so this is actually probably about this John Hilton, his birth record. But you can go through and look at them individually. You can look at the details here, or I use middle click to navigate a lot because it opens up a new tab most of the time. So you can go and look and see, okay, hey, look, it's actually connected already to his wife. You can connect it to William. And then, interesting. So it's saying 1831 for a birth of a son named John. There is kind of a gap there between 29 and 33 where there might have been a son John, but they already have a son named John. So that's something that I'd want to look at more. I mean, this Sarah and William. But let me tell you, the number of, I think they do it on purpose, the number of people I've seen where there happens to be two William Hiltons married to Sarah Hiltons, and they both have sons named John, just, 30, 40 years apart. It could also be that this son John is like, no relation at all, and it's somebody who just happened to wander through. So you have to be very careful. Sometimes it's just impossible to know, and it's usually better to, at least in my experience, to err on the side of, all right, well, it's probably not a match, than to try and do it. But honestly, I have seen, and this is Oldham versus Great Bolton, and I think they're in Bolton. But anyway, I actually did see a family where they did name the second. It was I think their third son, the same name as their first son, because I think their first son went off into the army or something, and maybe it was a disgrace. I don't know. But then he came back and visited later because he was on a later census, and I'm like, how did he feel about this? And these are questions that you're probably not going to find the answers to, but that I just find absolutely intriguing and sets my mind on fire, as it were. Anyway, so back to William Hilton and his numerous descendants. I always get, as I'm trying to get back in the swing of things, I get a little bit, I have to kind of poke around. So I've been working with the Duckworths a bit. So William's daughter Alice, let's look at her in family tree. Sometimes it takes a little while to load. That's okay. So do I in the morning. So Alice married William Duckworth, and they had a bunch of children. So the spouses don't always show up here. It's usually the person, and then you can see the children. And I've managed to get Alice Duckworth down. So these, born in 1902, I'm probably not going to be able to get that much further. Sometimes I can find a death, if it's a guy, I can usually find the death because their names don't change. But even if I could find her death, she probably got married. Being able to find the marriage record and the death record is very challenging. You get immigration, the only reason we know about these people who were in Utah is probably because they were part of the church and their records were already captured. Somewhere in here, I think it was in here, maybe it was a different line, they ended up in South Africa. I've seen some who went to Canada, and some that just disappear. So that can be challenging. Like William Hilton here, haven't gotten to him yet. Don't know why that just ends. But so I have in my head that I want to, as much as possible, flesh out these Duckworths. Australia. William Hilton Duckworth, England. So let's start with Charles Duckworth. I'm just going to give you a little bit of taste of what I try and do when looking these. So he was born in 1861 in Lancashire. we have, so these residences here, these are indications. The censuses in the UK were conducted every 10 years on the 1. So 61, 71, 81. We don't have 91 or 1901, although it looks like that is. So we've got Nellie, William, Elizabeth, Margaret, Sarah, and Charles, which correspond to, where were we? Duckworth, Charles Duckworth. So we have, right, Nellie, William, Elizabeth, Margaret, Victoria, Sarah, and Charles. Before we go on into the children here, I actually want to talk to you a little bit about this site. It's called Pazilla, and it connects to the family search tree, and it allows you to more visualize the relationships between the people you're looking at. So there's a tree view that you can use on Family Search, and it looks something like this. So it's, it'll start with the main person, any spouse, children, and like if we know about their marriages, and then it will go back just a few generations. So this is the William, Hilton, and Sarah that we started with. But as you expand out, it can get really hard to see any gaps. And I find that Pazilla is really good for that. And there is a descendant view. Descendancy, there we go. But again, so we see Charles and his wife and their kids. So we know William Hilton here. That's his wife, but we don't know about any kids. It's just a little harder to see what it is that, to try and get a bigger sense, a bigger picture. So that's one of the things I found the Pazilla site really useful for. All right, so back to Charles. Looks like I've done a little bit more work on some of these. So let's take a look at Nellie and see what we have for her. Nellie Duckworth, census 1901. So she was born in 1892, so that'd be the first census she'd show up with. So government record, census record, birth name. So one of the challenges, fun and annoying things, is a lot of times, so there are different sites that if you are a member of the church, you get some free access to. And the main one that people use a lot is Ancestry. Find My Past has also had some good records. My Heritage, I haven't really found much there that's of use. It's more a collection of individual people's family trees, which is not necessarily correct or not, so it's a bit of a challenge. So we're going to just start here with Nellie and take a look at this record. So 1901, it was in Bolton, Lancashire. Father Charles, mother Rachel. Charles, mother Rachel. So this seems like it's probably a match. Let's see. William, Elizabeth, and Margaret, and Sarah. So that's probably here. Spelling, Margaret, Marguerite. Spelling is not. Spelling is optional. It's a poor man who can't think of more than one way to spell a word. So this is how you attach a record to the tree. It'll have, this is the information from the record, and this is the information about the person that it will go through the records, and if the record has an indication of, okay, this person is related to that person, it will try and match up those people for you. Sometimes you have to do some manual things, sometimes not. So this would add the information that in 1901 on 31 March, they were residing in Bolton, Lancashire. And again, you can see here, not only do the names match up, but the ages do as well. Sometimes the census dates are a little bit off. So like this is 1897 versus 1898. And that's because in the census, it's not actually, I'll show you the image, they don't actually do the, what's the word? They don't do the actual birth date. They do the age. Let's get signed in here. So this is the Find My Past account. A lot of both Ancestry and Find My Past, and I assume some of the others, have connections because the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has been doing a lot of this work for a long time. A lot of the records are shared between the different sites. The church makes this information available because it's trying to get people interested in this work and trying to understand all of it. So Find My Past and Ancestry and other sites are collecting sometimes information from, like, the local county history, might be digitizing their records, and so they'll make them available. The records come from a lot of different places. Anyway, so Find My Past, this is the census, the 1901 census. So I'm going to just walk you through it. So these, the street number, the road name, the houses. So this is mostly just, so like this is 62 and all of these people are in the same house. So this is Charles Duckworth. So the names, either the head of the household or their relation, whether or not they're married, age of their last birthday, profession, whether they're an employer or worker or kind of living on their own means. Some of these just are either very specific and you're like, I wonder, what a cotton spinner in a mill does, or it's like worker. Okay. But, it doesn't give the specific profession. It depends, like each individual census worker, if it wasn't clear what they needed to put, they would just, like this person, oh, okay, so they're a worker. I'll just put worker. That's all I need. Whereas another person might be like, okay, I need to actually put their occupation. And then this is where they were born and if they had any infirmities here. So you get a little bit used to reading the handwriting, but sometimes it's difficult to make out. And that's also one of the challenges with the digitization, is that I come here and I look at this and, okay, Charles Duckworth. Somebody else might look at it and be like, it's Charles Duckworth. And then it's digitized as Charles Duckworth, even though it's Duckworth. And so then actually being able to find it makes it a challenge. That's just part of the challenge of family history. So Charles, his wife Rachel, and so, wife. So this is the relationship to the head of the household. So his wife, daughter, son, daughter. So again, this is the age. So Margaret was 3 here, but that doesn't mean she was born. So it's taken in 1901. It doesn't necessarily mean she was born in 1898, but as it's calculating the age, it's a calculation based on, it was 1901 minus 3, maybe maybe yes, maybe no. So, but it's close enough, and everything else is lines up. So we will add her here. We're into attached source. Matching age, name, parents. You want to try as much as possible to explain why you attach the source. Sometimes it's difficult for me to come up with something other than, well, because it's the same. But try and be better than me and actually be a little more explicit. So we'll attach her, and then we'll just do this for all of them. So for the parents, we'll age, name, children, and it adds it keeps the same message. So then when we go back to adding it in for the children, name, age, parents. We could probably also add siblings. Again, don't follow my example. Compare, add, attach, and Charles hadn't been born yet by the time of the census. So we'll go back to Nellie, and we'll refresh it. It doesn't refresh automatically if you're doing something on another tab, and come back here. So we don't have any more pending hints. So we know she was alive in 1901. Let's see if we can find her in 1912 or 1911 census. So these here are links to, they automatically build some sort of search parameter or give some sort of search parameters on the different sites. I'll usually start with family search and look at ancestry and maybe find my past if I'm digging further. But usually I can either find what I need or I'm just never gonna find it. Okay, so here's Nellie in 1911. The way the 1911 census is pulled in, instead of it being kind of like as a family group, it's more as individuals. So you usually have to attach person to person. Unless they've changed that since I've been poking around. Oh, they have changed it. Okay, so we've got William, Elizabeth, I guess like she was named Margaret and they started pronouncing it Marguerite, or it wasn't really Margaret, it was supposed to be Marguerite. Kind of impossible to know, but now we have Charles there as well. So matching name, age, parents, siblings. Look at me. Okay, we'll attach all the kids. And then we'll go back and add the parents. So some of this is just, it can be a little tedious, I guess, if you get easily bored. But it goes pretty quickly, except if you're a child of the internet age. So instead of parents and siblings, it's children, spouse. If you're watching this on a YouTube video, it's probably like, oh my gosh, it's so slow. Why isn't she blowing up creepers? But it's because it's not Minecraft. That's a different series. Alright, when we refresh this, and we've now got her residence in 1911 as well. We've got her census records attached here. We don't actually have, we have a legacy source census record, which we also have here, but we don't have a birth record. So I'm going to come over here as well. I think I saw birth registration index. Births and christenings. But William and Elizabeth is not the same as Charles and Rachel. So England birth records can be hit and miss. There'll usually be a birth registration index, and sometimes it's clear enough and sometimes it's not. So Nellie Duckworth, all it is there was a child whose birth was recorded in whatever quarter it was, whatever year, whatever district. So it's very vague. You can then use that the information in this to actually request a birth record if you can't find it other places. So all this is mostly just a confirmation of the birth year. So it's 92 versus 91. Again, we're kind of running into that age. So she's 9 in 1901, but she could be born in 90. So birth year estimated 92, but it could be 91. Before I actually add this, I want to go back and see if we can find on Ancestry a record of the birth. Sometimes I can, sometimes I can't. For all that, I get a quote-unquote free account to Ancestry. Some of the information is still behind a paywall. because why not? Oh my gosh, I am so jealous. Dionysus Duckworth. There's some amazing names. So they have the civil registration. So I want to just show you what this image looks like so you can see. It's not the actual like recording of the birth record. It's just like, here are all the last names and then the first names, and then the different last names and then the first names. And they eventually started to add a bit later. They started to add like the mother's maiden name, but then it's just last name, first name, and the district, and then this is actually the indication of where among all of the actual records you can find the actual record. So it's not a huge it's not like the definitive record. So you couldn't necessarily say, okay, this Nellie Duckworth is the same Nellie Duckworth, because if there are two Nellie Duckworths born in like 1901 and 1902, then you're kind of out of luck. Like here, so the reason I would be okay adding this record, even though it's slightly year off, and here's another Nellie Duckworth who has a different father, is this is Haslingden, Lancashire versus Bolton, Lancashire, and they have been in Bolton since then. A lot of my ancestors and their descendants are still in Bolton, unlike me. So I'm going to just scan down a little bit further, see if I can see anything else. Birth record. You can also get interesting. So the civil registration death index is basically the same kind of thing. And this is where I came back to come back to some of the challenges of doing the family history search is getting, I would have to actually order the death certificate to be able to confirm, is this Nellie Duckworth, or is it somebody else who happens to have been named Nellie, who happens to be born in the same place and maybe married someone with the last name Duckworth. That's partly why it's difficult with the women to be able to extend it further. Interesting. So this is the other Nellie Duckworth, born in Haslingden. Let's see what else we got. Blackburn, birth, death. So there's probably some. And one of the challenges I found with Ancestry as well is everything is in here. Censuses, birth records. So there's 192 pages, but the further back you go, the less specific things are. And the search criteria, they'll get pretty broad. 1907 is not the same as 1892, and you can massage that to an extent. The broad versus exact on the names, that just drives me a little nuts, because I'll know it's Nellie Ann, but they'll also search for Ann Nellie. It's okay. We can deal. But every now and again, it just makes me a little crazy. So that actually, being more specific on the date up here, means we now only have 3 pages of records. Now we're getting stuff in Michigan, as well, U.S. federal census. Well, we know she wasn't in West Virginia or Maryland because we had the other information. So it's clearly not her. But anyway, so I think I'm going to call that good for now for Nellie. Attach this. So matching location and approximate age. And what that'll also do, if somebody else is coming along to do Nellie's, or to try and, Nellie is their great-grandmother or something, this gives them a little bit more information. They might already know the specifics of her birth, and marriage and death, or marriage and death even, but not necessarily birth. And they might be, more interested, I need to get this birth certificate so I have it for my records and I can make sure it's the right person. I need to get her death certificate, things like that. Because they're descendants of mine rather than or not descendants of mine, but they're the little bit further out. I usually don't bother to get the actual records because it could get really expensive. Because there are a lot of people that I would need to get the records for. Sometimes Ancestry for Lancashire and like the I think like the Manchester area in general, they have some records that you have to pay for. And again, it can get very expensive. So I usually don't do that. So didn't see anything that looked like a possible marriage record for Nellie. And again, this kind of comes back to it's difficult to find some of the information for women. So you can, for family search, again, the specifics versus the not, it can be a little hit or miss. But let's say I wanted to look for a marriage record for someone named Nellie born around this time. So again, we have approximate, a marriage registration index rather than the birth or the death. So this will have, these are kind of interesting. So it'll have these people all got married on this date. These women all got married in this quarter and these men all got married in this quarter, and you can eventually sort of start lining them up. And after 1911, they actually did include the spouse name. The problem is, again, actually getting the marriage record is expensive, so I didn't want to close that. So I'm not necessarily going to go and order it. And, there's Nellie Duckworth here in Bolton and here. It could be she remarried. That's actually probably in line. He might have died in World War II. And she remarried, or who knows? This could be a different Nellie Duckworth, and our Nellie Duckworth actually didn't marry. We don't really know. Okay. Although I'm relatively certain it's her, but because there's just not enough information to confirm that it's her, I'm just going to leave that for now. And go on to William Hilton Duckworth. So it actually, I think I must have looked at him already, or he is connecting to people some other way. Yeah. So somebody else is actually, he must be, maybe this person's ancestor or something like that. So they have his marriage. They don't have any information on children in here, but if he had children born, let's see, 1920, so they'd be getting up there if they're still alive, but it's not impossible that they're still alive, especially maybe they had children later, something like that. We don't actually have a marriage record for them. Let's see if we can find something. Birth. So these are the records he's attached to. If it has this little thing, that means the record's actually been attached to somebody. So, and this is when we have William Hilton Duckworth, William Duckworth, Frederick William Duckworth, William Duckworth. This probably is him. I'm just not going to touch it because I don't have an actual birth record for him. So again, let's go to type, marriage, see if there are any marriage records. Born 1894. We know his father was Charles. What was her name again? Mary Josephine Saunders. We don't know when at all they were married. Maybe they were, it was a late romance and they got married later. Who knows? Let's see if we do spouse's last name is Saunders, if that limits anything. No. All right. And again, a lot of the records are after 1911 aren't available or are not available for free. So they could be married, have had kids. Their kids could still be alive. We'll have to just keep a note of these. I'm going to, so one thing that I have, is it here? So Evernote is one of the ways that I try and keep track of I need to go back and look at this person in, however long. So Evernote, you can take information about it. Don't I do that? Let's do bookmark. That's a good one. So post 1911 England work. This just means once more information after 1911 becomes available, I need to come back and look at this. And I actually need to add Nellie to that list as well. I've got a lot of people that I need to do that for. Let's come back here. However you need to keep track of your notes, feel free to use whatever tools work for you. And save. All right, I think I'm going to call that here for now. We've gotten through Nellie and William. Next time we'll take a look at the other kids and see if we can add anything else for them. For now, it's been Jedi Pink, over and out.